Today at Let's Talk Marketplace, we talked about
why products by Adidas and Nike have turned up on European Shein marketplace,
and how Amazon's recent cleanup of the vendor program affects hundreds of brands.
Have fun listening.
Let's Talk Marketplace,
the Marketplace podcast with Ingrid Laumer and Valerie Dichtel.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk Marketplace. Valerie, are you already back in podcasting shape after all our travels to Cologne last week? And your birthday on Sunday, of course. So how are you?
Yeah, well, I'm pretty well. Fully recharged, let's say it like that. Well, I would say we had a really full week last week. We did some photo shoots for new content images. I'm pretty sure you will see them soon. And we've been on the virtual DIY summit, let's say on stage. And I've never been so nervous before I talk. And we didn't even had an audience, which we saw.
No, so, it's fully remote and all filmed in in front of a green screen, or should we say green room, because that was huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was rather exciting, but I think also rewarding, I guess, because it's being part of such a big event, such as the fourth Virtual DIY Summit, and this DIY, looking into this DIY community and spreading the marketplace message. That was fun.
Yeah, and also to see and realize like how much like forward, for example, or mature the fashion and sports marketplace business is compared to the DIY industry, and what the DIY industry can learn from fashion. And then to make this also a bit like more charming and smart, because I mean, you know how I look like usually, like my dresses and stuff. And then there's like this a little bit more old-fashioned DIY industry.
Lots of suits.
Yeah, lots of suits. And no pink dresses. and yeah, that was fun.
Michael from Obi in his bright orange Obi shirt. So
yes,
there was a bit of color already.
That's true.
It's not just you.
Yeah, but it was really interesting, and I'm so much looking forward to all the things which are coming with together with also the Global DIY Summit next year in Lisbon. So yeah, you will hear definitely more from this part. And if you want to watch the recording, if you missed it, you can always watch it on Virtual DIY Summit. You can just put it in Google and then you find it. Then
or you look up our posts of this week. We will
True.
have both been talking about the DIY Summit, and we will link you to the recordings. Yeah, anyway, but there was a lot of stuff going on, not only for us, but for the whole marketplace community, I think. So last week, German marketplace people have been hotly debating about Otto and their alleged retailer clear out. And just 2 weeks ago, we had similar discussions about Amazon and the vendor program. Yeah, lots of stuff going on at the moment. I've got lots of hot news as well. And later on, we will talk about especially the Amazon vendor clear out in more detail with our guest, vendor expert Martin Heubel, who will join us later just for the topic of the week. Yeah, shall we get right into it, because there's lots to unpack in this episode.
Yeah, well, maybe just to mention it this time, usually you are used to that our guest is in the beginning, like due to all our meetings and stuff, we like spread we recorded in parts this message, so you will find all the questions we usually asking our guests and like who you are and where do we know each other. We put it all together in the topic of the week. And before of that, we have so much news for you, and I would say let's keep it with that, and and
get started. Right, but first, a quick note of our sponsor. If you are a regular listener of Let's Talk Marketplace, you already know that Kaufland has opened 2 new country marketplaces in Poland and Austria over the summer. And with these 2 country marketplaces, Kaufland is continuing its expansion into Central Eastern Europe, which began 2 years ago with the launch in Czechia and Slovakia.
Yeah, this naturally opens up new opportunities for brands and retailers looking for an easy way to expand into Central Eastern Europe. Kaufland makes it really easy for them. Sellers can list on all Kaufland marketplaces with a single registration. Free automatic tools are available for product data translation. There's a personal seller support in all marketplace national languages. And Kaufland has also taken care of payment processing in local currency with all relevant local payment methods.
Yeah, and if you want to know more about all of this, maybe check out our episode 78, where Doreen Schum, head of marketplace sales at Kaufland, was my guest. Or
you can register for actually 2 events. For our webinar on October the 9th, that's when I'll be talking to Matthias Kluth from Kaufland and the seller Antonia Ligato from G&L about the new international marketplaces. And you can ask any questions you might have about them. This is in German, just to mention it. And you can also find the registration link in our show notes, or you can register for our Marketplace Universe Connect event with them on the 22nd of October in Cologne. We would love to see you there.
Right, that was that. More on Cologne on the 22nd of October later in this episode. But for now, let's talk about the news of last week. There were a lot of them.
Newsflash.
Right. I guess the biggest news was something that the German e-commerce expert Stefan Wenzel uncovered, because he found out that the first Western sports and fashion brands have appeared on Shein. So at the moment on the German Shein marketplace, for example, you can find products by Adidas and Puma. And if you look in the Swiss marketplace, there are brands like Nike or Ray-Ban or Guess. Yeah, so I guess these brands are not very happy. Some of the affected brands have already announced legal steps against that. Yeah, you've looked into it a bit more, Valerie. What do you think about all that?
Yeah, we just dipped into that. I would say, Shein is really trying to, get some more relevant assortment. And, I'm pretty sure they sourced it from either China, from the grey market, from retailers. We had a look into, I had a just quick view about Adidas in Germany, and they were really just 4 shoes or something. The really, really usual ones like the Samba in black or the Adilette in a black white as well. So just a really small assortment. But we also had a look into the Swiss one about Nike and Adidas and also Onitsuka. And there's a lot more assortment. And I'm pretty sure they really, Shein, of course, wants to have more relevant selection. And I'm pretty sure those big brands we mentioned, they're not very happy about that, and they would never ever sell their products to Shein directly. So I'm pretty sure Shein found their ways to get to those products.
It's sort of reminiscent of what happened at Amazon Fashion some 6 to 8 years ago, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe a bit longer. But if you are a seller or if you are a big marketplace, online shop, whatever, and you want to have assortment which is not directly available for you, especially in the fashion industry, which is so widespread with so much assortment every year, every season, new products, new colors, new sizes. It's I would say a bit easier compared to other categories to get the assortment, because we have seasonals, we have products running out, overstocks, B products which were not 100% fine, and we have also globalization, and we saw also a Adidas tricot from Argentina. And it was sold on Shein Switzerland, or maybe in Spain as well, because there was a Spanish customer review, and it was mentioned that seems pretty original. But I'm pretty sure it was for the Chinese market because they put also some pictures in it, and the inner label was in Chinese written. So yeah, there is like
globalization
many,
in a nutshell, really. I mean,
yeah.
a German brand sold by an Argentinian inside of Spain, originally dedicated for the Chinese market.
Yeah,
that's nice.
That's like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think we have to look into that a bit more, and we will. Working on an article about that, a more in-depth deep dive on that just right now. If it's finished until we publish this episode, I will link it in the show notes. But yeah, let us know what you think about that. Okay, talking about brands that don't want to be on marketplaces. There was a case of American Eagle Outfitters. They, at the moment, are suing Amazon over alleged knockoffs of products of their Aerie line. According to American Eagle, Amazon has used the trademarks of this line on its own site to deceive shoppers, or so American Eagle puts it, into believing the products were available on Amazon, even though the company hasn't authorized the sale of Aerie products on Amazon. Yeah, never-ending story, and sort of the same story, I guess, in a way.
Same but different.
Yeah, same but different. But just the same thing, and just as hard to control if things are going to Amazon or not. Obviously.
I mean, to be very honest, it's almost impossible to have like the. To be safe in all your sales channels all over the world, because you never know, like, if there's even one retailer of you which is like reselling their products to another retailer, to another grey market, to another country, and so on and so on and so on. So I think the only possibility is if you have really like those really, really clear guidelines in terms of marketplace business, which we also talked about more often already in the past, which like legal opportunities you have. But in this case, it's really, really difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. What else happened? Yeah, I found an interesting figure. The German Customs Department of Darmstadt has done some sample inspections of imported goods from Asia. They didn't name Temu, but it was clear that this was a sample. This sample inspection was aimed at Temu and maybe Shein. And of the imported goods that they inspected, 95% were not up to EU safety standards. So that was toys and kitchen household products and tools and whatever. And nearly all of them failed, which is, just coming back to that problem of not having an even playing field here. Because those companies just don't care about new standards, obviously.
I mean, they don't care, or they don't like get the prices to make this possible, or what I find even more dangerous, let's keep it like that, is, I mean, we just imagine if you like toys. I mean, if toys are not pushing the safety or like getting like meeting the safety standards, that's so dangerous. As well for tools. I mean, also for textiles. I mean, if you are buying a baby romper suit and the color is not fixed, right? Like not properly, and your baby or yourself or whatever, you get like something on the skin, and I mean, there could be so many like difficulties not meeting the standards. I mean, they're there for a reason.
Yeah.
So yeah, wow. Yeah, that's I mean, that's something what we always already thought about, but now we have it like really on black and white paper, let's say. But then that's the question of like, okay, now we are aware of that.
Yeah. What are we going to do about it?
Is is also the end consumer aware about it? Do they really care about it? Or do they, I mean, often it's the case of like, I don't care, and then something happens like, oh, now I really do care. It's like, okay, but, and what does also the German government and the customs, etc. But what do they do against it? I mean, in the US, there's also something changing already, I heard.
Yeah. They're much stricter now. With before letting Temu parcels into the country, they're controlling that much, much more in detail, and just leaving the stuff for weeks and weeks in logistics centers before they allow it to be distributed to the customers, which is a much harsher approach than what the EU is doing at the moment. Yeah, but we do have this problem of understaffed customs everywhere in the EU. So
yeah, but. Also, if you think like, okay, if there's happening something, let's hopefully not, right? But if there's something happen on this, like, who do you like claim for, right? Is it Temu? Is it the fabric producer behind it? How do you want to get to them? Because I mean,
hard to reach.
It's hard to reach. Like they're like, we don't care. And blah.
Yeah. I mean, what we can see on the positive note here is that the government is behind it now. They have realized that this is a problem. Not just the German government, but the whole of Europe has realized this. They are looking for ways to react to this. It all takes a bit longer in the EU, but they are
a bit
on
longer
it now, and so we'll see how that turns out. Right. Final thing for today, a small correction. Some 2 weeks ago, we reported here on Let's Talk Marketplace about Amazon's new guidelines for handling unsaleable stock, which had been shortened from 30 to 23 days. And an avid listener to our podcast, Nico Moll, has brought it to our attention that this new guideline only applies to unsellable customer returns, damaged or expired goods. So products which are still fully functional but have not been sold for a while should be safe from this new guideline. Yeah, thanks for clearing that up, Nico, I'd say. Always good to have listeners such as this. Right, so these were my news for today. And then I think we can turn over to the topic of the week. But first, really short mention of Marketplace Convention, as Valerie said before. Yeah, because the next big event for the Marketplace community of the DACH region, at least, is just 3 weeks ahead. I'm talking, of course, about the Marketplace Convention, my very own event baby. It's taking place on October 23rd and 24th in Cologne and features lots of high-class speakers and talks with representatives of Eddingen, Einhell and Oscar Weil, Curry Design, Pop Confession, Redcare, Pharmacy, Kaufland, Meta, Comsa. Yeah, I'm quite proud of the program, I have to say. Anyway, you can check it out on marketplace-convention.de/program. So, but today we wanted to give you an exclusive sneak peek, which isn't on the website yet, because we got some inside information from our sponsor, Channel Engine.
Yeah, indeed. The exclusively told us what they are planning for their slot at Marketplace Convention on October 24th at 11:45 a.m. And there are Caterina Caracciolo, Strategic Partner Manager DACH at Channel Engine, will have a fireside chat with Miro Mevius, Head of Marketplaces at Lampenwelt GmbH, internationally better known under the company name Lucom.
Yeah, and that's really cool. I have to admit to low-key jealousy here, because I tried to get Lucom/Lampenwelt on my stage for some years now, but they have been very elusive when it comes to their marketplace strategy, at least until now.
Yeah, and then I make sure to listen the session for you. Katharina from Channel Engine will mainly discuss with Miro Lampenwelt's cross-border expansion strategies. Together, they will explore Lampenwelt's experience in international markets and the key strategies behind their global success. Sounds definitely interesting, so make sure so you get your ticket for the Marketplace Convention now and join me for a Channel Engine session.
Okay, so that were our news for the week. And now let's talk about a really hot topic inside the Marketplace community, and that's Amazon's big vendor clear out, let's call it.
Topic of the week.
Right. So, if you, dear listeners, are working for a brand which is part of Amazon Vendors program, then I sincerely hope that you don't know what I'm talking about now, but chances are high that you do. In the first week of September, lots of smaller brands received an unexpected message from Amazon, which said, and I quote, "We've made the decision to stop sourcing products from your company as part of our regular review of product offerings and a strategic realignment to optimize our operations and better serve our customers." And the termination of all the contracts is effective as of November 9th. So, and Amazon was making it quite clear that, quote, "We won't enter into any new agreements or extend current ones beyond this termination date." Yeah, so you can read the full story on our website, marketplace-universe.com. I'll link the article in the show notes. And Amazon hasn't commented on this whole affair in any detail yet, even though the news was soon like all over the place on the whole international marketplace and especially the Amazon community. Right, so that's the kind of nice surprise right before peak seasons that all brands love Amazon for, don't they, Valerie?
Yeah, yes, they do. Not. Well, actually, I mean, this is something which is like a bit similar to the things like Zalando did, I think like almost 2 years ago, or last year as well. Last year. And I mean, I'm an ex-vendor manager from Amazon too. I know somehow like they think, but from a vendor perspective, what I get a feeling from the market, there's a big insecurity. So I had like a friend, and he was like, they are a big vendor, but in a niche industry. And then they were like, and he was like, "Hey, I heard that, like, and I have like my annual review this week, and I'm like so afraid if I get this notice, and what the fuck shall we do if?" And there's like a big insecurity. And I think overall, I mean, Amazon does these decisions in terms of like facts and figures and so on. But overall, like in this short of time, especially in this season, when you, I mean, imagine you already prepared for a Black Friday, stocked up, and then they tell you like, "Yeah, well, we don't care. We pushed you maybe like 2 weeks ago to do more for the Cyber Week, and now we terminate you for the 9th of November. Go deal with that."
Can go into seller program right now. Great, isn't it?
Yeah, great. Like this is something we can do within 1.5 months in peak season.
No problem.
So, well, to be very honest, this kind of like how they deal with vendors, I mean, that's my very personal opinion, right? But I left Amazon because I didn't want to burn my name, because I really liked my vendor relations, and I didn't want to be this badass, like I'm speaking from the Amazon language, right? I was like, hey, I want like to get the best out of this for Amazon, but also for the vendors, because it's always like a two-sided collaboration and not a one-sided. But that's what Amazon did, and I mean, I guess we will talk a lot about this today.
Yeah. I first learned about all these developments through a LinkedIn post by Martin Heubel, one of Europe's leading vendor and Amazon specialists, which is why I invited him to our podcast today. So good to have you here, Martin, and talk more about this, this affair, let's call it. Hi, Martin.
Yeah, and thanks for having me. Hi, Ingrid. Hi, Valerie. A pleasure to be here today. And very much looking forward to dive into these juicy details that Amazon has revealed just ahead of the fourth quarter.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Peak season for you as well, huh? Yes.
Absolutely.
Good to have you here, Martin. I'm looking forward to you shedding a bit more light in this for us and for our listeners. But before that, let's quickly introduce you to our audience. So tell us in one sentence, who are you?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Martin Heubel. I used to work, as well as you, Valerie, at Amazon for around 5 years, both in Germany as well as here in the UK, where I'm now also leading my independent consultancy practice, assisting first-party vendors of Amazon to ensure that they can match their reality to the business operations of Amazon and thereby also elevate their profit margins. So in practical terms, I assist them doing selection, management strategies, as well as their vendor negotiations. And assist primarily manufacturing brands on Vendor Central.
Yeah, and I can feel that there is a lot of need. In which time, like in which years have you been at Amazon, Martin? Because I was like from 2013 till 17, so almost 4 years.
Yeah, so we must have been overlapping quite a bit, because I was starting at the end of 2016 and I then left in 2021.
Mm-hmm. And which category have you been?
Hardlines, so home housewares, and then later in the CPG space. So I don't think we've overlapped. You were in the shoes business, right?
Soft lines and fashion,
fashion, okay. Very different.
Well, we've been working in the same building for like 1 year. Okay, interesting. Okay, but next question. What do you do best in marketplace business? I mean, what do you do?
As a marketplace business, typically really kind of showcasing to manufacturing brands who come out of a very traditional bricks and mortar background, what they need to do differently when it comes to online marketplaces such as Amazon. Because let's not kid ourselves, the reality is very different when you want to sell something online, and you cannot just follow a more for more approach by incentivizing the retailer, in this case Amazon, to kind of drive your business. And the kind of key exemplary situation of that is that the marketplace is not necessarily developing the category for you, but you as the brand have to become quite proactive. And that spans across all the business operations and all the business activities that you want to push forward. Whether this is in your vendor negotiation, whether this is from your media strategy, or whether this is from an overall online strategy point of view, this is where I really come in and usually help brands to kind of figure out the commercial side of things.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And how does it come that a German e-commerce specialist used to work with me in Munich, specialist? I live in London now and publishes almost exclusively in English. What happened there?
Well, I mean, I basically was in London and studied in London a little bit earlier in my life. And I always wanted to come back because I really enjoyed the international vibe, but also the opportunities that you've had to kind of meet a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds and different cultures. So this was always something that fascinated me. And I made also quite early onwards a target in my career at Amazon to kind of try and find in this international operation an opportunity to segue myself back into the country. And to the English-speaking part, I mean, if you are looking at a lot of brands and a lot of vendors, especially at the pan-European or also at the international scale, I mean, it's simply the best way to really kind of ensure that knowledge can be transferred. Because when I transitioned into my role as an independent consultant, what I saw was that there was plenty of information available out there about 3P, FBA. You could find plenty full of videos, but there was little knowledge about Vendor Central. So I thought, okay, why do it in German if you can kind of target more people and also support more people at the same time?
Yeah. I totally agree with that. That's also the reason why I changed my language to English. Even though we have like 50% German listeners, but or readers from like my profile. But I totally get you.
Absolutely. And I totally get wanting to come back to London. Anyway, right. So now that we know that who you are and why you are the perfect person to talk about Amazon vendor problems, let's dive into it, I would say. So maybe first let's have a look at the scale of this last affair that's going on at the moment. So can you tell us a bit more about how many brands have been affected by this? Because Amazon is not saying anything about it. So can you venture a guess?
It's very hard to really make a valid guess here because, of course, I mean, what is, I think, important for perspective, Amazon has not for the first time terminated vendor relationships. If you remember, I mean, there were also a lot of media headlines around it early in 2022 and 2023. Amazon basically formally notified pan-European distributors and wholesalers about the termination of their brand relationship. And if you look back, I mean, these occurrences and instances are happening from time to time, where Amazon seems to be looking at its retail partners and suppliers and define, okay, so does it make sense for us to maintain an active relationship with them?
Yeah, but this one feels bigger somehow, because I did reports about those before that you were talking about, but this one feels, I don't know, more significant.
I think the juicy detail that we're seeing here in the news is twofold. On the one end, we're hearing from multiple brands across different regions, so different markets, that they are affected. So some in the US, but I also been contacted by a lot of smaller brands and smaller vendors in Italy and Spain who've reached out to ask for assistance and ask for support because, yes, they got this kind of email. And that typically indicates that we are not talking just about a handful of brands, but typically about a couple of dozens or even hundreds of brands. Now, typically what these brands have in common is that they have an annual revenue with Amazon of less than 2, maybe only 5 million US dollars on an annualized scale, which means if you kind of multiply that, you're easily speaking about an impact of potentially 200 to 400 million dollars in revenue that is being terminated by Amazon proactively. And you don't know if all of these brands are in a position to shift their entire business from vendor to Seller Central, for example, within the time frame, which is only 60 days. And I think that in front of like the peak season, which is important, especially for smaller to medium-sized businesses, is of course very difficult to navigate. And it's also kind of a way to kind of ensure that you are navigating, especially quarters where cash flow becomes more and more important.
What I also realized when reading through the many comments, and especially lots of agencies have reported that customers have reached out to them because they have been cancelled and so on. What my feeling about this was that what is different to the cleanouts from before is that now also accounts are affected that, I don't know, that haven't done anything wrong, so to say. So their products are not bad, or their products are not working, or have been returning all the time, or whatever like this. So there's not crap that has been cancelled from the vendor program. But medium-sized and smaller-sized brands that might just not be that attractive anymore for Amazon. Can you pin down what are the main reasons that a brand gets now cancelled?
Yeah, I think we have to set it into a wider context here. That is unfolding for quite some while, because this is not an overnight decision that Amazon has been made, but rather integrates into what Amazon's newer CEO, Andy Jassy, has pursued and progressively pursued over the last few years. You're looking at the annual earnings reports and also the quarterly performance. You'll have seen that Amazon has had not the best year in 2022, with operating margins dipping to only 1.8%. But now in the most recent quarters, Amazon has been able to actually elevate this operating margin performance all of up the way to double digits. So 10.7% in the first quarter of this year and around 10% in the second quarter. So Amazon really kind of drives an integrated profitability focus right now across its business divisions that is embedded into 4 key pillars. The first one is automation and offshoring. So trying to improve and automate a lot of the repetitive tasks, and those that cannot be automated being offshore to regions with lower labor costs. So here we are speaking about Eastern Europe or India. Second of all, reducing its corporate headcount. And we've seen that last year with Amazon reducing its corporate headcount by around 15%, especially in retail business operation units, with over 27,000 headcounts and full-time employees affected. The third is a backwards integration focus with suppliers. Amazon wants to kind of improve its costs along the joint value and supply chain. And the fourth is the reduction of inventory coverage. And I think this point, particularly for current listeners, will be very top of mind, because whenever you speak to a brand right now, they are yearning for attention to get Amazon to order more, because Amazon is currently just prioritizing its own order efficiencies and holds as little inventory as possible. Now, back to our main topic. Why is that now integrating into the termination of vendor accounts? Well, because it makes sense from a profitability and automation point of view. This move is primarily about freeing up resources in Amazon's mass vendor management program, where brands don't necessarily have a designated buyer, or as Amazon calls them, a vendor manager, and therefore also fit the profile of those brands who have been terminated. They didn't have a designated vendor manager who have helped them day in and day out with their concerns and also negotiated trading terms with them. So they were effectively relatively small, had a somewhat limited growth outlook from an Amazon perspective. And thereby it's very important for Amazon to ideally reduce the friction that Amazon has with them, because it means that even in the vendor program, they have to employ somebody that is there from a mass vendor management account perspective, who can respond to cases raised via Vendor Central that are commercially related. So if a small brand wants to increase their cost prices or amend their trading terms, such as is their legal right from time to time. And I think the decision here is really about facilitating efficiencies, reducing further its headcount, especially for brands that have a very limited growth outlook, and also deprioritizing those brands that are not really carrying a lot of category relevant selection. Now, this is important because the differentiation why Vendor and Seller Central exist in the first place is that Seller Central is for all of those brands that are marketplace businesses that want to basically sell on Amazon as a marketplace and as the platform. But vendors are the brands with which Amazon wants to draw shoppers into its categories. So they are super relevant to further adopt them and convert them into programs such as Amazon Prime, Prime Video, etc., which are also more profitable for Amazon in the long run. And Vendor Central allows Amazon to own the inventory, which means it can control availability as well as a sharp pricing, which is competitive, both which are incredibly important to drive and earn customer trust, which Amazon has been all about over the last few years and is still about. But previously, the only difference was that Amazon was very relaxed about who they would take on to Vendor Central and who they wouldn't. Whereas now, since the end of the pandemic, towards the middle of 2022, Amazon has become much more restrictive on who they onboard and invite to Vendor Central. And typically, those brands needs to be on a designated internal holdout list so that they even have a chance to be onboarded. And I think now this move of the Terminations is one step further to clear out all of this historically built up vendor amount and vendor number.
And if you hear this, Martin, then you could easily come to a conclusion to say, like, okay, is the retail business for Amazon still relevant? Do they want to slowly getting rid of the whole business? I mean, the marketplace business becomes even bigger every year. The market share is always growing compared to retail. And so what would you say about that?
It's intended. I mean, what this move is not about is the end of Vendor Central. Vendor Central will continue to exist, but with a focus on enterprise brands. Why? Well, because these multinational vendors have dedicated resources to secure category critical selection for Amazon. And if you're thinking about the Apples, the Sonys of the world, they will not necessarily move towards a marketplace third-party Seller Central model and do everything themselves, because the economies of scale that Amazon can offer to them via supply chain efficiency programs such as direct import, where Amazon purchases the goods directly off the harbor in China and imports them directly to North America or the European Union themselves, cannot be matched right now, at least, via Seller Central. So, of course, long-term, the next 10, 20 years, we don't know what's going to happen. Nobody really knows other than Amazon. But for the mid-term, I would say, no, Vendor Central is not going to cease to exist. Because as I said earlier, this category critical selection is heavily important for Amazon to drive pricing and availability, which is important to then earn the customer trust that drives a lot of conversions into Prime and other parts of its business, which are highly profitable.
But still, especially for middle-sized brands, it's not that easy to detect if they're in danger or not, is it? Because all these things that you now mentioned, why Amazon is coming to the decision to cancel some brands and not cancel others, these seem to be very internal ideas of Amazon. It's really hard to, look from the outside at a brand and say, okay, you're in danger and you're not. So if you are a middle-sized brand and now still in the vendor program, what would you say to those kind of brands? How can you tell them you're still safe and you're in danger?
Look, you can't. And I think it comes down to a very critical business decision that every brand has to make. And this is similar to when you're on a social media platform. You rent the users, and on Amazon, you rent the shoppers, and you rent your retail, so to say, on the marketplace. You don't own it. Amazon can decide to change the rules of the marketplace at any point in time. Sellers can be faced with higher selling fees from today to tomorrow, as well as vendors can be faced with higher trading terms that they are at least able to negotiate. But Amazon can also simply shut them out if they are no longer profitable or in Amazon's best interest to keep on the vendor platform. So when you look at it from a pure business case perspective, of course, there is the need to employ and deploy diversification strategies in the mid to long term, at least, if you feel and fear that you are at risk of potentially losing out on the benefits that you currently have from and with Vendor Central. I think brands should particularly be careful to evaluate a diversification strategy if they're looking at single-digit growth, and if they are also very limited in terms of their size outlook over the next few years. So they are not necessarily having expansion plans across the European Union to kind of facilitate their business across more markets. And they are very much dependent on only one marketplace, such as Germany, France, Italy, or Spain, for example. Because those vendors will certainly then be in the next iteration or potential next wave. And I'm not saying it's coming for sure, but it can come in some years, where Amazon will evaluate, okay, now that we basically are only working with larger brands, who are the ones who have decelerated or declined in growth year over year? And who are those that require us to put a lot of manual effort in to manage on a local level? Whereas we have built now more and more of an organization that acts at a regional level and employs resources such as vendor managers, not anymore locally, but also wants to work with brands more and more at this pan-European regional level too.
And speaking about this wave, Martin, if I haven't got this letter who talked about Ingrid before, am I safe now for this wave? Or do I still have to be like frightened to say like, oh, well, let's see what they will tell me at the annual review meeting?
Well, I guess the only statement that can give you reassurance is from Amazon yourself. Typically, vendor profiles will be more protected who have a direct access to a vendor manager. So if you have somebody to speak at Amazon too, I mean, you can obviously reach out. It's also very critical. I think a lot of these brands who were being terminated, they were often, not always, but very often not covered by Amazon's operational support service, the so-called AVS or Amazon Vendor Service. Because once again, Amazon seems to use that as a signal that a brand is willing to kind of move with Amazon into the future in a strategic partnership if they are willing to invest into it. So if you right now are a brand, even if you're small or medium-sized, who have a buyer on the other side and a brand specialist from AVS, typically I would say at least for this year, you're fine, but you probably want to look at diversification strategies via a hybrid approach to expand at least your knowledge about, okay, in a worst-case scenario, how long would it take you to actually make the switch and to also build up the knowledge and expertise to do that should it become reality.
Okay. And speaking about those who this worst case scenario became reality now I'm like, I got this letter, I'm like, shit, and now I really have a big problem. And I can just sell my things till beginning of November at Amazon. What would you recommend me, or like, if
what should I do next?
Affected?
Keep breathing. that's the number one advice, right? I mean, don't panic, because typically when you're in panic mode, then you're making the worst decisions that are not necessarily the best for your business in the medium and long term. So when you're looking at the facts, every brand has three options in such a situation. If you are being affected by Amazon and you got this letter, well, you can appeal the decision, which is potentially your first move and that every brand should at least try to exhaust. Reach out to Amazon or send a letter via Vendor Central, a case via Vendor Central, outlining why you believe that this is the incorrect decision. Also highlight past growth trajectories that have been potentially above category averages in your market or in your category. And if you have still a contact number or email address from a former vendor manager who has potentially onboarded you not too long ago or who has managed your account not too long ago, try to kind of reach out to them and see if they can help. If you don't have it, well, then you can still turn to LinkedIn and try to find out a buyer or a buyer's name who is potentially be the one who's actively taking care of larger brands in your category, and try to see if they recognize you as strategically relevant enough to kind of keep you in the Vendor Central program. Once again, it's not necessarily a way to kind of improve the outlook or to reverse engineer this or to reverse this decision from Amazon. But you should exhaust it just to see what's happening, and because it will save you and protect you from a lot of friction that is otherwise coming down the road. In parallel, and I must stress, this should be done in parallel and not consecutively, you should look at your other options. And there are two of them. Either you're basically following Amazon's recommendation and you transition to a 3P model. So you're, for example, opening a Seller Central account. This should not be delayed in terms of an action because it takes time to set up your brand registry, to shift it from vendor to Seller Central so that all the rights are seamlessly integrated into your new accounts. But also from a media and advertising point of view, you will need a different account access compared to your previously known vendor dashboard. So take enough time, think about what differences it will make in terms from an invoicing and order processing standpoint, whether you can fulfill orders yourself. Most of you probably will not have the fulfillment capabilities to meet the Prime requirements, or utilize Amazon's Fulfilled by Amazon order fulfillment, which then helps you to kind of get the Prime badge immediately. Sorry, go ahead.
What about the stock, Martin? Because now, like, Amazon bought my stock in the vendor business. There's like, I don't know, thousands units still in the vendor business, and they terminated. Can I just switch this over from vendor to seller, or do I have to like ship it back and then put it back into FBA, for example? And there's also like this. Inbound freeze for Q4. So what about that?
Yeah, that's a very important point, right? The good news in quotation marks is Amazon has already purchased your inventory, because on Vendor Central, once you send the inventory to them, you basically can raise the invoice. It now comes down to whether Amazon has or has not return rights to return especially these remaining inventory levels to you into your warehouses. So make sure that you, if you have return rights, update your warehousing location so that if Amazon returns the goods, they are being sent to you and not to a former carrier partner, for example, where then the inventory is stranded and you have additional costs to recoup and recover it. There are ways sometimes to kind of request Amazon to flip inventory between vendor and Seller Central, but that requires you that you are fully set up on Seller Central already. So for brands that are currently not exploiting an active hybrid strategy, this is a little bit more difficult. But in a worst case scenario, of course, Amazon tries to sell this inventory now for the next few months, even after the relationship may have been terminated, or worst case, they are going to liquidate it. And that means they either destroy your goods or sell them for cheap to other distributors or wholesalers who may purchase them and then resell them either on or off Amazon themselves. So yes, there's also some implications to, of course, then what prices these products are being displayed at. So yeah, make sure that you reduce the inventory that Amazon has as much as possible, even though you think Amazon owns the inventory. It can hurt you in the long run should Amazon choose to liquidate it to other selling partners of theirs.
Ouch. I really I feel like, I don't want to be like in the shoes of those poor vendors. I really have to say.
It's very difficult. And I think let's not forget about option 3 that you have if you receive this letter. Although it's often not a very popular choice, but the amount of messages that I've gotten from service providers in the last 2 weeks is insane. So I wasn't even aware how many of those service providers exist. But you can, of course, also choose not to move to Seller Central and to stay on Vendor Central. However, you're not going to manage the account yourself any longer. You would basically work with a third-party distributor or wholesaler who has a vendor account to Amazon themselves. There are a couple of names, right? Some that are more common are like the Patterns or Spreetails of the world, which will often engage with brands to kind of get to a hybrid model in the first place, but they're probably having the happiest days right now of their lives because they will get a lot of new clients in a very short period of time.
About that, I wanted to add a question here because that's what I've been seeing as well, especially on LinkedIn. This is a bit of a, I don't know. Okay, I appreciate people telling, I can help you, but there is an idea of, I don't know, vultures circling, because there's so many service providers now coming up and saying, okay, I can help you with this, I can help you with this. So let's get down to realism here. How fast is it possible to find a service provider who's good, who's fitting your needs, and to switch your whole business to them? Is that are these claims even real? And when they say, okay, we can deal with this situation for you, don't have any trouble?
Yeah, great question. I mean, you need to do your due diligence, right? Don't just fall trap for any marketing messages or any kind of concessions they make, maybe in their payment terms or also in their kind of investments that they're asking from you. Do your homework first, understand, okay, which other brands are they distributing with Amazon? And what I would particularly put emphasis on is make sure that those distributors or wholesalers that you're looking or evaluating to work with are very comfortable selling your products in the category that you're working at. So make sure that they are also, I mean, oftentimes brands look at it as, oh, I don't want really this distributor to sell also competitor brands, but that can actually be a good thing because that means this distributor has category expertise and they're already set up with their vendor account in that category and they don't have to ask for additional permissions from Amazon to be able to list products in that category. And then I think compare the options that are available in the market.
Yeah, I would also agree, like to the category fit as well as the company size fit, because it's really dependent on how big you are as a vendor, like in terms of like annual turnover, and there might be like partners who fit even better to your company size, because there are ones who are more for the, let's say, like smaller to mid-sized vendors, and then there are other ones who say like, yeah, but if you have like an annual turnover lower than 5 million euro, then we are not for you. So that's another one. You really have to see this category fit and this turnover or size fit to each other. And what I also recommend and always recommend in terms of like choosing any distributor or service partner, go ask them for brands who are working with them and ask the brands how it is to work with them on a personal view and like on LinkedIn or whatever. I mean, that's where I think you get the most authentic and honest feedback about how it's working with them.
Oh, definitely. The problem is just this 1.5 month time deadline that is looming over brands. So I guess people might be willing to take a bit rushed decisions on this. This is why I wanted to talk about that as well. Right, looking a bit at the time, but Martin, I think we can now officially solidify your reputation as Amazon Industries' unofficial oracle, because I think 2 years ago, you predicted that Amazon will specialize and restrict its vendor program already, and now we are here. So what brought you to that prediction 2 years ago?
I think multiple factors, right? I mean, again, I'm a little bit nerdy when it comes to Amazon's annual earnings reports, especially also the quarterly ones, because I think you can read out of that quite a lot. And if you then also join the kind of annual earnings call, where Amazon gives sometimes, I think, unintentionally guidance to brands on what they are planning to do going forward. Because, I mean, you're having a lot of investors joining these calls, and Amazon basically lays out often their blueprint on how they are going to improve the profitability of their retail business. And volume leverage was cited in the 2023 earnings call as a significant lever, and we're seeing that heavily being leveraged now with brands where Amazon is focusing on larger brands, but is also willing to kind of put much more, and quotation marks, pressure on those to reach their margin targets and to even give up a little bit their CX, so customer experience focus at times in certain categories. On the flip side, what we've also seen over the last year, and we touched upon this earlier, is that Amazon hasn't been very new to this, right? I mean, distributors and wholesalers were basically counted on for a lot of many decades before, and then in 2022 and 2023, Amazon distanced themselves from them. Now, why do we still have distributors and wholesalers today? Well, because Amazon has come to the realization that if it would terminate all of the links that it has with these retail partners, they would lose a lot of access also to category critical selection, also in consumer electronics categories and hardlines categories where a lot of manufacturing brands don't even sell directly to retail partners. They're utilizing distributors to all of their retailers. And if you all of a sudden then lose out on certain brands that are quite significant, I think they had to make certain exceptions, or as previously they called it, white listings in their processes.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing as well, especially from the electronics and telecommunications sector, that there's just this distributor scene that is much more established than in other industries. And I think Amazon is not being able to get rid of those in a short time. Yeah, anyway, but care to predict something for the future of the vendor program now? Because then we can come back to it in 2 years and can say, see, Martin was right again.
So a lot of brands are right now concerned about this profitability focus of Amazon that has lasted for quite some time. We saw it literally towards the second half of 2022. But I really think we're in the last third of this right now and are going to see, following the AVNs, so annual vendor negotiations in the first quarter of 2025, a relaxation on the profitability focus, and the pendulum will swing back to growth and sales. Why is that? Because we're seeing that a lot of Asian-based competition, the likes of Shein, Temu, TikTok Shop, are increasingly improving their footprint in a lot of categories that Amazon has had the dominance in a lot of markets, such as North America and also here in Europe before. And they don't want to lose more and more resellers and brands to those marketplaces. Because let's face it, if a Temu grows further and also expands its domestic footprint here in Europe, then that means that a lot of wider distributed brands will face resellers trying to get to these platforms and marketplaces to improve their growth outlook that they may not be able to achieve on Amazon because of the high density of competition. So Amazon will have to switch back to growth. They've already announced this week at the Accelerate Summit in Seattle, that they are forming more formal and deeper ties with the likes of TikTok Shop to integrate their media solutions and also buy with Prime solutions with them. So for any brand that is currently very concerned about how they're going to survive Amazon, if Amazon is just asking for more margin every year, I mean, of course, vendor managers are employed to do that, but you will see towards 2025 and the second half of it latest, a much more relaxed focus and more focus on sales growth.
That was a positivity to that prediction that I didn't actually expect. But thank you for that. So let's see if that turns out to be true. I do hope so. And I would agree that there will be a shift towards growth as well, but we'll see. Right. So that was our update on the recent Amazon vendor situation. And I will let Martin now get back to all his yearly talks with his vendors now, because there's like the full season for it. Maybe we'll come back to that another time. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Valerie, for having me. It was a pleasure, and I hope to be back soon.
Yeah, I think we should definitely make, a repeated visit of this. Anyway, so, right, over to you. Have you been affected by the clear up? How will you react to it? If you have, let us know in the survey after the episode or in the comments on our LinkedIn posts. We would be really interested to know.
Yeah, and then tune in again next week when we talk to tech here at Let's Talk Marketplace. Tom Meyer from the Marketplace Integrator Channel will join us to talk about the right tech stack for the marketplace business, how to find the right amount of automation, and about the advantages and disadvantages of best of breed versus full service software.
Yeah, that's our German episode. And in 2 weeks' time, we're back in English to talk about thriving Central European market and the most interesting marketplaces in Poland, Czechia, Slovakia, Romania, and Bulgaria. And we're joined by Czech marketplace expert David Čikanek for that one. So make sure you don't miss any of this and subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you are listening to us. Thanks for being with us. Bye-bye.
You listen to Let's Talk Marketplace,
the Marketplace podcast with Ingrid Lommer and Valerie Dichtel.